Colin Cowherd asks serious question to WNBA players. Why you take a shot at the golden goose? The veteran talk show host weighed in on the WNBA players' fight for higher salary, taking aim at the critics of Caitlin Clark. Caitlin Clark is the biggest draw in WNBA, and as discussions over pay rises continue, veteran commentator Colin Cowherd has criticized perceived infighting between players. WNBA players are currently in the middle of protracted talks with league officials over the new Collective Bargaining Agreement, CBA, which is expected to bring a considerable boost for player salaries. Clark had been criticized by LA Sparks star Kelsey Plum, but Cowherd was many of many to fire back in Clark's defense. Why do you take a shot at the golden goose, Caitlin Clark? Cowherd asked. You guys were flying, before she arrived, on one of those airlines that made you pay for a cup of water. One of those airlines that the planes are the color of a highlighter. Now you're flying private. You went from a Motel 6 in a sketchy part of town to a Four Seasons in the shopping district, Cowherd said. Stop talking. It's just misstep after misstep. It's time to grow up, girls, fast. This is the player that got you off the airline that is bright yellow. She got you upgrades to a better hotel, he added. At last week's WNBA All-Star Game, players wore T-shirts reading, "Pay us what you owe us," in a pointed message to the league. Despite not being fit to play in the game, Clark was also wearing the T-shirt on the sideline. However, her and Team Clark were oddly criticized by fellow player Plum. Not to tattletale, but zero members of Team Clark were very present for that, Plum said, referring to the All-Star team led by Clark for the game. It was a strange remark coming at a time when WNBA players are trying to present a united front as they push for improved pay and conditions. Clark has so far been a very effective advocate for players' conditions more broadly, and she looks set to be the face of the league for years to come. Colin Cowherd didn't whisper it. He rarely does. With the full force of national television behind him, he leaned in during a recent segment and asked what's become the talk of every post-game, podcast, and press row in women's basketball. Why do you take a shot at the golden goose? The goose, of course, is Caitlin Clark. Rookie, record breaker, ratings magnet, cultural lightning rod. And in Cowherd's eyes, and in the eyes of sponsors, networks, and front offices, the best thing to happen to the WNBA in a generation. But Cowherd's question wasn't just a defense of Clark. It was a challenge. A mirror held up to the league itself. A call out to the stars and veterans who, in recent weeks, have taken jabs, subtle and not so subtle, at the attention, treatment, and paycheck disparities surrounding the 22-year-old phenom from Iowa. Cracks in the court. This season was supposed to be a celebration. Caitlin Clark's arrival lit a bonfire under the WNBA's visibility. Attendance surged. Jersey sales broke records. Ratings went places they hadn't been in years. For a league that had long fought for mainstream relevance, Clark wasn't just a player, she was a tide. But success can be complicated. Veterans like Kelsey Plum, Aya Wilson, and Dejonai Carrington have all hinted at frustrations. Not necessarily with Clark herself, but with how the media, and by extension the business, was treating her. There were questions about fairness. About why other generational talents didn't get the same marketing push. About why Clark's arrival meant a new charter flight policy. About how equal pay still seemed like a distant dream for players who had bled for this league for years. And in those questions, Cowherd saw what he considered a dangerous pattern. The goose and the grit. Let me be clear, Cowherd said, gesturing with the same intensity he uses for NFL hot takes. Caitlin Clark isn't your opponent. She's your opportunity. He compared the situation to the early days of the NBA, when Magic Johnson and Larry Bird essentially saved the league from financial disaster. You didn't see players going after Magic for smiling too much, he quipped. You saw them ride the wave. That's the essence of Cowherd's argument. Caitlin Clark is a rising tide. Why try to anchor it down? Why not celebrate the momentum instead of poking holes in the hull? But to the players, the ones who built this league brick by brick, the story feels more layered. Legacy meets lightning. For years, stars like Maya Moore, Sue Bird, Diana Taurasi, Sylvia Fowles, and Candace Parker gave everything to elevate the WNBA. They played overseas in the off-seasons just to make a living. They fought for collective bargaining rights. They held the line when few watched or cared. So when someone like Clark arrives and immediately becomes the face of the league, it can feel like erasure, even if it's not her fault. But Clark isn't asking for special treatment. In fact, she's repeatedly praised the legends who paved the way. She's asked for equality for all WNBA players, not just herself. She's been vocal about wanting higher pay, not just for her own bank account, but for the whole locker room. Still, attention brings tension. When you're the golden goose, your feathers get scrutinized. The culture clash. What Cowherd may miss, or what he chooses to simplify, is that this isn't just about one player. It's about two cultures colliding. Caitlin Clark represents the new age of college-to-pro stardom. She came in with millions of followers, nil deals, and a Nike contract. She brought white-hot media attention and crossed over into mainstream headlines. To much of Middle America, she is the WNBA, even though the league existed long before her. The veterans represent earned equity. Blood, sweat, and seasons spent grinding for respect. They remember when reporters wouldn't even show up to post-game interviews. They remember when flying coach meant sprinting through layovers on tired legs. And so the comments, the shots Cowherd is referring to, aren't about jealousy. They're about justice. They're about reminding the world that Caitlin didn't build the court. She's just getting to play on it. Bridging the gap. Still, Cowherd's core point echoes in boardrooms and break rooms alike. Infighting is bad for business. What the league needs now isn't resentment, it's unity. It needs veterans and rookies to lift each other, to amplify each other's brands, to be part of a larger movement that's pushing the WNBA into a new tier of cultural relevance. The truth is, the veterans are right. They do deserve more pay. They do deserve more visibility. They do deserve the respect of fans and media alike. And Clark's emergence might be the thing that finally makes that possible. The golden goose doesn't lay eggs in a vacuum. She lays them in a league that deserves to grow.